All right, I'm going to explain the progress that's been made today, well, pretty much over the last week on the left-hander chassis project. We really kind of hit a wall with these cylinder heads that we thought we were going to be in trouble, but we've got it all figured out. Basically, I talked about it in another video. The guy hooked us up on these cylinder heads. He threw them in with the car purchase, but they needed some repair that he thought would be okay. Further review, it wasn't going to be okay. Basically, the rocker arm studs where they screw into the head. So you've got thread down in your cylinder head here. So 4 of them on this cylinder head had been stripped out and then had helicoils installed. And then 1 of them on this cylinder head, the exact same thing. So all of them are good, 7 of them are good besides this one here. And what happened with that one, it was definitely the worst, is they had drilled and tapped it, but when they drilled and tapped it and installed the helicoil, the stud was now sitting like this. And I'm being a little exaggerated on that, but what you can see is it's no longer in line. So now your push rod length is going to be different on that one, and your rocker arm isn't going to want to line up. So that was an issue. And they'd already drilled it larger for that helicoil. So I looked into a bunch of different inserts, and the problem you run into is you have this shoulder right here that's pretty narrow once you drill that one size larger, and it already was. So the best solution I could come up with was to drill it with I don't remember the tap, but I do have it, or the drill size. I have it written down. Basically right around a 1/2 inch. I think it was 535 thousandths, and then tap it with a 9/16 tap, and then put a 9/16 insert in there, and then drill the insert square. But man, it was going to be really difficult without having this thing in essentially a jig to hold it and use a mill essentially to drill it. Long story short, we took it to our local machine shop, Kaylee's Motor Service in South Bend, and they were able to repair it with an insert, doing exactly what we thought. They ended up drilling it 535 thousandths, put a 9/16 insert in there, and were able to actually square it though when installing the insert. They didn't actually have to drill it, so worked out perfect. It holds great. It's actually, like I said, this one here, I've already torqued it down and aligned my guide plates. Otherwise, I would show you guys further exactly what it looks like. But instead of a traditional helicoil like that, that's just like loose thread, it is, I'm calling it an insert because the thread is all attached and it actually has some material to it. So that's a lot stronger. There's a lot of, I don't like helicoils because those coils can stack up and they don't like to thread in easily, where if it's an insert, the coils don't move because the material is all solid. So just kind of a pro tip there. Helicoils, in my opinion, are garbage. I mean, I guess they have their place, but when at all possible, they call it a time cert. And a time cert normally uses a insert that instead of this being like a spring coil of threads, it's one solid piece, and those hold a lot better. But that really wasn't the problem here. The problem here was the angle they drilled it on. Like I said, lucky for us, we were able to get that salvaged. So now we can move forward with the cylinder heads. You can see the valve spring difference between solid roller and hydraulic. That's the other nice thing, is we're not running solid roller like they were. We're going to a hydraulic, which is much softer seat pressures, basically about half. So that's a lot less force on these studs, which is great. But honestly, I think it would have been fine either way. Now on this other head, we went through and replaced 2 of the helicoils because the threads were damaged on them. So I had to get that old helicoils out, which is a pain in the butt, but I was able to do that. And then when I went ahead and installed new ones, and then went ahead and put the head on with the head gasket, aligned the push rods with the rocker arms, torqued all of the studs down. I red Loctited any of the ones that had the inserts or helicoils, and we're good to go. Everything's Loctited, everything's good. All I've got to do is I'm waiting on 2 more guide plates, and then I'll torque the rest of these. Then it's on to the valve springs. I have spring cups for the intake side because they need about 60 thousandths worth of shim, and then the exhaust side only needs about 15 thousandths. So I like to run at least a 15 underneath all valve springs, because if you don't, it's going to have a tendency to wear into a cylinder head. Even though it's iron, it will hold for a while, but it will over time wear into the seat there of where the valve spring rides. So I got 15 thousandths hardened shims coming for underneath the exhaust, and the 60 thousandths coming for the intake side. The reason why there's a difference is the intake valves have been replaced and the seats were recut for a bigger valve, so that essentially just moves the valve up, and that's why it requires more shim underneath there. But I'll have those parts tomorrow, so I'll get these heads all assembled. That is awesome. We can use these things. We were really worried we might not be able to use them, but we are going to be able to move forward with them. And everything else on them is pretty good. It was just overcoming those stripped out studs, which I'm honestly not concerned with. I don't think it's going to be an issue one bit now. They've all torqued down nice. Everything's looking good, but man, that took a while. That was a process to get that all figured out. So like I said, I'll get that. The other thing was I got the engine cleaned up, but checking piston to valve clearance, I wanted to go from the 1.5 rockers to the 1.6 rockers, but I'll see if I can show you guys here real quick. Well, I'll show you 2 things. At one point, the engine definitely sucked something in and kind of nicked up this piston, but it's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. But if you look closely right there, that intake valve had touched this piston, and it's going to be more difficult, but it's actually on this one as well. The exact same thing happened. So that concerned me, and I knew basically what it's called is, I'll show it on this side, it's called radial clearance around the valve pocket. So with the large valve, this radial clearance was really tight. That valve wanted to be all the way up against there. Now, depth-wise, we had plenty of clearance. We had like 125 thousandths. But the radial clearance was really tight because we were running a 208 intake valve. Well, now we're going to be running a 205, so that does help a little bit. But I wanted to add 50 thousandths more valve lift. Well, now that tightens it back up again. I went back and forth and checked numerous times, and it was right on the edge of what I would say is okay. So basically it's about 40 thousandths, and they say don't go any tighter than 55 to 60. I've ran it tighter than that, and it's been fine. Honestly, that had about 35-ish, 30 before. And you can see it was fine. Why it wasn't fine on this side is this head was milled 12 thousandths more than this cylinder head, and I knew it. I knew it was really tight, and it did work. 15 to 1800 laps, never been a valve. Everything was fine. It just touched a little bit, but that made me nervous. So I decided to set it up this time with these heads with a little bit more clearance, not run the 1.6s, just continue with the 1.5s. I know that'll be fine. Measured all the clearance, honestly, about 6 times just to make sure. So I'm going to run 1.5s on the intake. I'm going to run the 1.6s on the exhaust because I have like 170 thousandths, and I have plenty of radial clearance on the exhaust because it's a much smaller valve. So all those parts are coming. I should be able to get this engine wrapped up pretty quickly. The other project that I'm going to be working on tomorrow is all the wiring on the car. A lot of the wiring is still there, and I've started to terminate things tonight. And it's looking like it's not going to be too difficult. I do have some of the gauges installed. The attack is just hanging down there right now. This one's going to get covered up. So what we're going to have is oil pressure, coolant temperature, voltage, and the tachometer. I don't need anything else. Honestly, I don't even need those. Like, really the only gauge I really need is temperature and oil. But yeah, I'll get those installed. I'll get the ignition box in. There's something else I was going to show you guys. Oh, the battery. So I got the battery installed, and let me see if I can find a light. I can show you guys a little better. No idea. Oh, there it is. Say I had it earlier. So with this car, the battery's tucked up in that corner right there. And you can see there's not much room for a battery there. Well, what that is that's a Honda battery, so it's a 51 series, and it fits perfect. So just for you guys that are looking to go with a little bit lighter weight battery, or a battery that is smaller in size, those 51 series Honda batteries work out pretty well. I actually bought that one used for 25 bucks from a local supplier. They normally have right around 500 cranking amps, which works perfect, especially in our application. We run an alternator, so I don't need a bunch of reserve capacity, so not worried about that at all. But yeah, this thing's coming together. Like I said, I'm going to work on wiring tomorrow, hopefully get most of that knocked out, get the gauges all working, get the ignition box tied in, get a bunch of these loose ends finished up. The seat's all in it. Seat belts are in it. The column's all fixed. All that's set. The suspension is pretty much done. It is, in fact, done until the car is complete, and then we'll go through and make some little adjustments and dial it in. Brake system is done, other than the air ducts for the front. Yeah, it's pretty much cooling system, finish the wiring, fuel system, and then I'll finish up the engine here. So hopefully we're going to start to pick up some steam with this thing. I'm going to try later next week to take a few days off work. I've got some vacation time. I'm going to try to put some more hours on this thing. I've just been doing it kind of nights and weekends and when I can. And I've kind of really realized I have a lot less time than what I would think. But it is what it is. We're making progress. I'm still excited about it. Like I said, my goal is to get this thing out, get some laps in it, put some seat time in this year to set us up for next year. That's always been the goal. That's still my goal. And we're still going for it. So it looks like we're far away, but trust me, it's going to come together quickly. So, all right, I think that'll be it for tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Keep it saucy.